Now I'm going to read you a little bit of chapter 2, which is titled The Image of the Sun. I'm going to read and stop on page 19. We didn't do much of chapter 2 yesterday, and we're going to go over more chapter 2 this coming Wednesday. And for the viewers that are curious, I'm reading The Road Home, God's Plan for Christian Growth. Rob, one of the preachers at our church, wrote this book. Here's what it says. Looking at my slight 150-pound frame, you might never guess I played football in high school. My introduction to the game came in 1980. I was in 7th grade. The experiences most imprinted on my memory are also the most painful grass drills and sprints. I will skip recollecting the torture of running 40-yard sprints, but for the uninitiated, I will sketch the grass drill. It is late afternoon in August. You are at the second football practice for the day. The summer sun beats down. Football pads intensify the oppressive humidity. Halfway into the workout, you are trying to remember why you signed up for this misery. It is time for still another exercise. Allowing lots of space between players, you and your teammates form up in rows. You run in place, your feet wide apart, equipment clanking under your uniform. Sweat pours down your face while you pant like a dog. The thick gummy keeping you from getting your teeth knocked out feels like 2 rubber fingers stuck in your mouth. Coach blows a short chirp on his whistle and you hit the grass. Your helmet's face mask and then your chest strike the ground. A loud grunt bursts from your mouth as the impact forces the breath from your lungs. The rest of your body lands. By the time your toes slap the ground, you are pushing your head and chest up with your arms. The upward motion continues back through your body as you leap to your feet again. Running in place. Grass and dirt stuck in the crossbars of your face mask. Over and over, it all happens. Run, run, run. Chirp. Hit the deck. Up again. Run, run, run. The first 5 are challenging. The next 5 are annoying. By number 20, you think Coach hates you. By number 30, you have visions of beating him with your helmet and stuffing dirt and grass in his mouth. The human mind goes to strange places under duress. Why did Coach drive us to the point of hallucination? In between chirps of the whistle, he enlightened us. I still hear his growling voice. You fellas wonder why I push you like this. I'll tell you, this is 4th quarter preparation. It's not enough to play good football. You can't get tired and wear out in the 4th quarter. If you can play hard all the way through, you'll win where other teams lose. My point here is not that Christians need to train hard so they can stick out till the end. That kind of thinking does not work in the Christian life. The point is that Coach could see the connection between the process and the goal. He knew what winning teams look like. More importantly, he knew how to shape us into that image. Similarly, God has in mind an image of what his people need to become if they are to enter the fullness of their destiny in him. It is his own image, and it is also the image of Christ. The daily experiences of the Christian life are the grass drills he uses to get us there. Now going to New Testament voices. 3 persons in the New Testament tell us the image of Christ. Equips believers for their destiny as God's sons and daughters. Jesus makes clear that his disciples should aspire to be like him. He says, this is the verse I read in part 1. This is Matthew 10, verses 24 through 25. And here's what it says. A disciple is not above his teacher, nor a servant above his master. It is enough for the disciple to be like his teacher and the servant like his master. The discipleship Jesus has in mind is no superficial imitation as though growing in his image is a matter of wearing clothes like his. trimming hair and beard to match his, or practicing his mannerisms. Following Jesus takes something deeper. Jesus calls his disciples to allow his experience to be replayed in their lives. He says, here's another verse I read in part 1. Matthew 16, verse 24. It says, "If anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me." Growing as his disciples requires duplicating his journey. This does not mean Jesus' disciples must repeat the exact circumstances of his life and death. They do not need to seek death on a wooden cross, though some have that death imposed on them by hostile people. Following him means surrendering themselves entirely to him and his ways, no matter the cost. Jesus gives his disciples an example of what replaying his life in theirs will look like. After washing his disciples' feet, Jesus instructs them to do the same. In John 13, verse 15, it says, "For I have given you an example that you should do just as I have done to you." In this scene, Jesus calls his disciples to more than repeating the act of washing one another's feet. He wants them to reflect his image as he gives himself for them, loving them to the end by going to the cross. They are in turn to conform to his pattern and love one another. As Jesus' disciples become like him, they also become like God, loving their enemies and praying for their persecutors. His disciples will take on the divine family resemblance and show they are sons and daughters of the Father, blessing others regardless of whether or not those people deserve it. Followers of Jesus become perfect as their Father is perfect. Jesus is the perfect representation of the Father. To be like the Father is the destiny into which Jesus also leads those who follow him. So, he mentions about Jesus and the examples that Jesus gives in the Bible. So now it's Paul. Paul also emphasizes becoming like Jesus in Paul's view. In Paul's view, conformity to Christ develops as we practice relationship with Christ on our journey through this present world. He writes, this is 2 Corinthians 3:18. It says, "And we all with unveiled face, beholding the glory of the Lord, are being transformed into the same image from one degree of glory to another." The continuous verbs imply a process in relationship with Christ believers are being transformed as they are beholding his glory. Taking on his image is not a single sudden change. Formation in Christ comes to fruition progressively. This transformation into the image of Christ is God's intention for the Christian life. Paul writes in Romans 8:29, it says, "For those whom be foreknew," he's referring to God here, "he also predestined to be conformed to the image of his Son." For Paul, this is then what Christian ministry is all about. Helping every believer to grow into the measure of the stature of the fullness of Christ, and the church as a whole to grow up in every way into him who is the head, into Christ. Believers grow toward this maturity as they are being renewed in knowledge after the image of their Creator. When believers lose sight of the gospel, Paul agonizes over their situation, weeping in prayer for them until, once again, Christ is formed in them. Why the tears? His goal is to see all the believers he leads become mature in Christ. So now it's going to be John. Along with Jesus and Paul, the writer of Revelation envisions conformity to the image of Christ as crucial to the fulfillment of God's intention for his people. In John's vision, John exhorts his followers to overcome by following his pattern of utter faithfulness to God. Even in the face of death, Jesus says, here's what John says in Revelation 3:21. "The one who conquers, I will grant to him to sit with me on my throne, and I also as I also conquer and sat down with my Father on his throne. In the apocalyptic scenes of his vision, John shows us how believers conquer as Jesus conquered. They overcome when they persist in faithful obedience to Jesus, even at the cost of their lives. That is the path of Jesus, faced with the cross. He refuses to surrender his faithful obedience to his Father, though it means death. Though that death and the resurrection that follows, he wins the battle against his enemies, as his followers conform to his pattern in the face of persecution and martyrdom. They also win. Resurrected, their destiny is to rule with Christ on his throne, facing the opposition of the present age and taking Jesus' path of surrender to God. Forms his image in them and prepare them for that position of authority to the degree they conform to his image of faithful obedience. They are readied for their future. Jesus, Paul, and John agree. In the Christian life, the Father shapes his people in the image of Christ. Formation in the image of Christ is necessary for the fulfillment of God's purpose.